This is a space where we manifest with purpose. Welcome, Feminine Initiate. I'm your host, Jess West. Let's dive in. Hey there, and welcome back to the podcast. I hope you're having an incredible day so far. So this may seem random for me to tell you, but I recently got some new eyeglasses and they have a blue light protection on it. And over the past couple days, being on the computer, looking at social media on my phone, I've noticed that wearing these glasses, I am less fatigued. I feel like before looking at the screen and just being on social media, social media, the trends, it's constantly changing. And I personally feel like it could be something with the lighting, which is always moving. Everything's in motion, that it was just making me so fatigued, was just straining my eyes. And so I feel such a difference with this blue light coating. Now, I'm not advertising. This isn't an ad, but the point that I want to make with this, with the world of social media, with the online world where everything is just moving so fast and everybody's sharing things and sharing about their life, and we're all just trying to keep up and looking at different trends. And I have been seeing many people recently have been getting exhausted, have been closing their social media pages, closing down the business or the influence that they were creating. They're just closing it down and retreating back inwards to really recollect themselves. And I have been seeing this kind of across the board. There's a sense of just exhaustion. Like we have been working so hard, pushing outside of ourselves, but with social media changes, we're not getting our message across. The reach is low, and it's really discouraging, especially if you're trying to build a presence online, trying to make your initiative known, whether you're a coach or a creative. And so if you have experienced any of this, this episode is for you. Now, I don't know if you caught last week's episode, but if you did, you'll recall me saying that the first mentor that I had in the personal development space was Bob Proctor. Bob Proctor's no longer with us now. He passed in February of 2022. And his family and closest friends have gathered together to create a documentary movie called Bob Proctor Legacy that premiered on August 10th. I had the opportunity to watch that premiere, and I'm going to pull aspects of that movie and of Bob Proctor's life to really reinforce the point that I want to make today. So in the movie, it was really surprising. Actually, it was really nourishing, I'll use that language instead, to hear about Bob Proctor's story. Because as I said, when I was mentored from him, I was seeing him at that end result, having already achieved a lot of wealth, having already had an influence in so many people's lives, having already impacted people at a global scale. And so there wasn't much talk about the struggle that he had faced in building his business. But in the movie, it is all explained. It had actually taken Bob roughly 40 years to gain the recognition and the wealth that he was after. But he held it on the screen of his mind for that 40 years. So the story goes that Bob Proctor grew up in the Great Depression. Money was really limited. It was really tough times. Later in life, when he was in his late 20s, he had built a cleaning company and he had several locations around the world, and he scaled that to over $1 million. But he felt like, as happy as he was with the success that he had achieved in his cleaning business, he felt like there was something more. He wanted to teach mindset to people because he was reading the book Think and Grow Rich, and he credits all of his success to reading that book. And so he heard of Earl Nightingale. Earl Nightingale was a radio host speaker. He had a phenomenal voice, and he had recorded a condensed version of Think and Grow Rich. He's also the creator of the program Lead the Field. You can find a lot of his audios on YouTube. They're amazing. They're also on Spotify. And so Bob ended up going to work for Earl Nightingale, and that was a huge pay cut. He went from $1 million a year or more in his cleaning company to $18,000 working for Earl Nightingale. But he was learning. It was never about the money. It was always about learning more and sharing with others, positively impacting other people's lives, being able to assist them in completely transforming their lives, just as Bob did through the teachings in Think and Grow Rich. And so he went on and worked with Earl Nightingale for a little bit, and then he decided to branch out on his own to start hosting live seminars. And between there, it was about 40 years until he really reached the success that he wanted, because in that 40 years, that is when The Secret, the movie, if you've ever seen it, that movie came out in 2007 and it blew up. It had more success than anybody in the movie had really anticipated. And that is really what kicked off Bob Proctor's success. But it wasn't the movie alone, and this is what I really want to bring in. It was his ability to share the material that he knew. And in The Secret is a documentary featuring a lot of personal development leaders, coaches in the space. And so it wasn't totally, featuring Bob, and it wasn't like he had so much time to be able to teach his material. But because he had so much practice, because he had that 40 years of persistent work of putting on his seminars, even if only 6 people showed up in the seminar room, he would continue to teach it anyways, even if no one was listening, even if he would get no from so many people, he would carry on. And he developed during that time a beautiful ability to be able to share this transformational information in a direct, concise way that was easily digestible and easily understandable by the people who were viewing. And so The Secret really launched Bob Proctor's influence in the space, but it wasn't the movie. It was actually Bob's ability to have prepared himself. He was prepared for the opportunity. And I wonder if he got that from Earl Nightingale. Earl Nightingale, in one of his recordings called The Strangest Secret, he talks about how success is when preparedness meets opportunity. Because if you're not prepared, the opportunity will only make you look like a fool. And so what Bob was doing during that 40 years is he was getting prepared. He was preparing himself for his big break, which was The Secret, which then catapulted him, which then allowed him to scale his business across the globe. And so to go back to many of us who are feeling defeated right now, who are feeling frustrated, who are feeling exhausted of putting so much energy out there, we just keep, giving of ourselves, creating content, and we're seeing such low engagement, such low reach because the algorithms aren't sharing it enough. And there's so much happening online in the digital space that it's just like, wow, is our content even getting seen? Is it even getting heard? And I want to give us a reframe to look at this time as this is our preparation. The more that we share, the better that we will become at sharing. I've spoken to so many podcasters, and they say that they're surprised when now indie podcasters who are doing the editing themselves. And when they're recording a podcast episode and then when they go and edit it, they'll say, wow, I didn't think I was saying like that much, or I didn't think I was saying And the thing is, these are all unconscious. They're filler words that we're doing unconsciously. We would never know that we have them, that we use them, unless we were to record a piece of content and go back and listen to it and edit it. That's the only way that we can improve. By doing it, we get better by taking that action. And so with whatever we're doing, if we're getting low results right now, undesirable results, we wish we had a greater influence, we are honing our skills. We're sharpening our wit. I don't know where I heard that, but I just felt like saying it. We are preparing for our big break, which will inevitably come if that is what we desire. Now, this is the next point that I want to get on because desire is huge. And as for Bob Proctor, even being coached from him, I always had in my mind that his goal was wealth. His goal was to gain the riches and become a multimillionaire. However, his family and his friends had done a wonderful job at reinforcing that it was never about the money for Bob. I mean, obviously, going from $1 million to $18,000, it was about the growth, and it was to be able to share this transformational information with others. It was always to help others. And his goal was to build a company that operates all over the world. And that is a lot of impact. That is a lot of lives transformed. Within that goal is the financial abundance, is that positive influence, that positive transformation in other people's lives. It's within the goal itself because you cannot reach that goal without it being accompanied with everything else that is involved. But the end desire that he had, that desire that kept him moving forward, was to impact people's lives in every country in the world. That was his goal. That was his big desire. I invite us all, this is an opportunity for us to go back to our desire. What is it that we really, truly desire? And this is for us only. I feel like so often in life, we could say that we have a desire and it feels good and we can feel the momentum and it's great. But then as soon as something difficult arises, like for example, the algorithm isn't sharing our information. We are sharing so much amazing transformational content on social media, but no one's seeing it. And so it's not equating to sales. It's not equating to more calls for our speaking, more booked calls for our programs, whatever it is, then we get discouraged. But when we have a deep desire, those things don't matter as much. We continue moving forward because we have this strong desire that is more important than the lack of results that we're currently getting. When we have this desire and we have the faith knowing that this is going to happen, I'm going to make this happen, we're going to move through whatever kind of challenge arises because we're going to see it as this is preparing me. This is the next step that's going to help me get to the next step that is going to help prepare me for the success that I will inevitably receive, and success in dollar financial means or anything else. It could be an impact. It could be in relationships. And so what do you really desire? What is the impact that you would love to make? Now, in reflecting on my own, because, we're always growing, we're always discovering more of ourselves. And for a long time, with all of the certifications that I've had in the coaching space, I would help my clients find their desires by using a lot of the language that my mentors had taught me to use. Like, for example, what is your C-type goal? Your C-type goal is something that you dream of. What would you dream of? Or what would you ask for if you knew the answer was yes? But the power really comes when we integrate our own life, our own story within what we're doing. That's the true embodiment of it. And so I have recently found my question. What is going to be my signature question? Because it directly relates to my life. And quite honestly, because I have been experiencing these challenges too. I mean, I'm in the online space. I also see the decrease in engagement. The algorithm isn't really pushing out my content. Like, I feel it. I'm in the same boat as you. And I've been finding myself recently going back in my mind to that moment when I was in the hospital bed, when I was informed that my life was going to look totally different, when I was told that I was likely going to be dependent for the rest of my life, that I wasn't going to go back to work, that I wasn't going to complete my schooling. And I remember looking back at my life in regret, wishing I would have done things differently when I was actually physically able to do it. And so I allow myself to go back there and I ask, if this were my last day, what would I regret not doing? And that to me is my deep desire. That's all that really matters. We are all going to get to that day at some point. It's inevitable. We know that this is all part of our physical journey here on earth. And what do you want to have accomplished when you get there? Time is ticking for all of us. What is it that would make this entire trip here worth it? And to me, that is when we find our desire. I have heard so often, I believe it was Bob Proctor too, who said, what is it that you desire so much that you would dedicate your life to do? And that's kind of hard when you're looking from this stance, from, however old you are, healthy, whatever, just kind of going about life, not really sure when that inevitable day is going to be, but what would you be willing to work that hard for? But when we instead could look in reverse, you're at that day. What would make this trip worth it? What would you regret not having done? And can you commit yourself to doing that? It might have something to do with where you're living, where you travel, what kind of initiative you launch, who you spend your time with, what you tell the people that you love. That's the goal. It is not anything else, because anything else, if it's not something that you can live without doing. If you got to the end of the day and you didn't do that, you would be like, oh, well, that's all right. It was fine. Well, that's not going to be enough momentum. That's not going to be powerful enough to keep you moving forward when challenges arise, when there's crickets on social media, no one's hearing your information, when you lose access to your accounts, when you are running an in-person event and only 2 people show up. I got to be honest, when I was first starting my coaching business and I was hosting monthly self-image clinics, sometimes I would have 0 people show up. I wouldn't have anybody show up, but I would keep going anyways, because what I was doing, I was honing my skill, getting better at my craft, getting more comfortable sharing information. I was figuring out what I actually enjoyed sharing more than other topics. And so there is never a loss. It's always a preparation. What you desire, when you stay consistent with that, it is inevitable for you. And so I hope this episode was timely and relevant for you. And if you know of someone else, another online coach, a content creator, someone who is also feeling a little defeated lately, then share this episode with them so that they too can reframe that this is a chapter of preparation. And when the opportunity presents itself, they will be ready and you will be ready. Thank you so much for joining me. And before we wrap up, I want to let you know about my Just Elevate bundle, which contains 20 practices, teachings, and learnings about the subconscious mind so that you can rewire your mind for confidence, self-worth, and step into your visibility. If you know that you're meant for more, if you find your desire when you're ready to express it, but you have some fears that are limiting you, you have limiting beliefs, you have feelings of not being good enough, then this bundle is going to help you rewrite all of that in a quick and non-invasive way so that you can truly begin living the life that you came here to live, so that when you get to the end of the day, you don't have any regrets. I've included the link in the show notes of this episode so you can take a look at the bundle. I hope you have a fantastic week, and until next time, be empowered. Thanks for joining me. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to hit subscribe so that you never miss an episode, and I'll see you next time.